And away we go. It's just me at the moment. Not sure if Eric or Risk are wanting to join, or if they're going to join. Otherwise, well, let's just get right into it. American Eagle under fire for Sydney Sweeney's Great Jeans campaign. Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle released a Great Jeans ad in July 2025 that sparked backlash over racial and eugenics connotation online. The controversy arose because the ad's pun on jeans, as in Genes, and focus on Sweeney's blonde hair and blue eyes echoed historic white supremacy themes. The campaign included a jean line designed by Sweeney, with proceeds benefiting the domestic violence support group Crisis Text Line. Advertising expert Robin Lander warned the pun is tone-deaf and risks normalizing exclusionary beliefs, while American Eagle's stock rose nearly 70% since the ad's debut, intensified debates on racism and eugenics, though some defended Sweeney and called the backlash an overreaction. American Eagle stood by the campaign. Now, honestly, I really try to get an understanding of what these critics are saying about what Sweeney has said or insinuating could be so discriminatory against particular people groups or whatever the primary complaint is in general. And it is, whilst it's clear, and now a lot of people know the reason why such people are making such arguments, and also, actually, another thing, I'm not going to argue with people having opinions, but I think when people do complain about something, and people are still entitled to whatever opinion it is, regardless of the severity of the situation, when people make claims or bring up complaints about anything, they only address the elements or themes that it is primarily an issue for them. I don't think many people go beyond that. I don't think many people that argue about such themes go beyond literally the issue itself. Like the proceeds benefiting the domestic violence support group text line. This is not just an advert that American Eagle are suddenly promoting. Like there was some charitable action behind it. It's a bit of a grey area about how people go ahead with charitable acts. The fact that a lot of people are not paying attention to the charitable acts is absolutely concerning. Why? I don't. Honestly, I'm infuriated. Some people in this world, they just like complaining. No, I'll be blunt like that. There are people out there that just like complaining. And whilst the arguments they bring up is valid, you can't just complain about the issue at hand and not look at anything else beyond that primary context. Like, whatever proceeds was to tackle against domestic violence. Now, regardless, people were victims of domestic violence or not, you cannot just go with what people are insinuating. You can't just go off primary complaints. I think it's important that people actually do additional research beyond what social media says. Even when a majority of people get their information from social media, you cannot rely on just social media. You cannot rely on just one source of information. There's always going to be a different angle that not many people are going to talk about. And that is concerning. Because if there's a lot of people like that, and that's how people think of the world, and that's how people get their information from, and how they interpret said information, I think we have to really consider what is to happen the next year or two. Or in fact, what's going to happen in the next few years. Way of getting information continues. People jump to conclusions without looking into what else is to the story besides people complaining about elements being insinuated as very offensive or discriminatory. It's not enough. Genuinely, it is not enough. And I think there are a handful of people that aren't doing enough research beyond what they are officially reading. So it is a concern. I genuinely can't stress that enough. This is a genuine concern that it's more than just a misunderstanding. This can be dangerous, and by the time people find out what the truth is behind the advert, it will already be too late. There is nothing else anyone can do. The damage will already be done. That is the path we're heading towards if the trend of how people get their information and how they interpret the information continues. I am genuinely concerned for the future. India and US to launch NISAR satellite for high-resolution Earth imaging. NASA and India's ISRO are set to launch the NISAR satellite on July 30th, departing Sriharikota's launch facility to capture high-resolution maps of Earth. The collaboration arises from the inaugural major partnership between NASA and ISRO, focused on Earth observation satellites to advance scientific data sharing. NISAR will use dual-frequency synthetic aperture radar to scan land, ice, and ocean surfaces globally every 12 days, enabling monitoring of environmental and disaster-related changes. The 2,392-kilometer satellite will launch on a GSLV rocket, deploying into a Sun-synchronous polar orbit about 18.5 minutes after liftoff, and is called NASA's most sophisticated radar we've ever built. The mission's 5-year duration will enhance global environmental monitoring and disaster preparedness, while symbolizing India's growing prominence in space leadership. So firstly, very cool, very nice. Secondly, although I have made my points and opinions regarding climate change and environmental protection, I have very, very different opinions for the two. Although I have concerns about how people perceive climate change, that does not mean I'm against surveilling our environment and protecting it from whatever harms could happen. So whatever NASA and ISRO are doing, I really hope it does very well. And of course, I hope there will be a lot of good coming out of that. Most cases there will, but other times there are going to be other complaints and arguments in the future. Otherwise, yeah, this sounds very promising, and of course, there is so much that's yet to happen. So hopefully it goes well. I do hope that people really don't take this story the wrong way or use the story as an excuse to say, "Oh, we be careful, climate change." Like, oh, climate change and our environment are two different things. We can control what our environment looks like and how it operates, but what we can't control as individuals is the climate that we're surrounded by. It's been going on for years. In fact, it's going on for centuries. It's been going on for centuries. There was a time, millions of years ago, that planet Earth was actually much hotter than it is today, mainly down to the amount of gases that was floating about the air during that time. But of course, times back then were much different to now, especially the species that lived on that planet. I'll leave it at that. So, hopefully, whatever this new satellite that NASA and ISRO are working on does very well, and there are tons of benefits that will certainly help with tackling ongoing future issues in the future and other related issues that I can't think of right now because there's so much going on in my head. Anyway, the government aims to build up to 40,000 new homes on disused railway land, attracting £350 million in private investment to create vibrant new communities with shops, green spaces, and hotels. Industry groups warn that the plan faces obstacles including strains on infrastructure, construction backlogs, and regulatory delays, holding up at least 40,000 new homes. The government says the developments will support jobs, growth, and provide much-needed homes near railways, which already connect up local and regional communities. And actually, that's very smart. I'll give the government that. That doesn't change my opinion on them, but that is pretty smart. Use railway line that's no longer in use, which is also connected to existing railway that's still operational to this day, and the plans to build new homes that will providing to build new homes and new businesses that will be next to those new homes. I hope. Yeah, absolutely. That I will back on that. But one thing I will have to address: how will that land be used to build such new homes? I mean, yes, we need more homes because home prices are already high enough as it is. And getting a home is more expensive. It's already expensive enough as it is. If there's going to be the amount of homes, but the amount of land that each home takes up is much more than most homes in the UK, that is not smart land use or land planning. If you're going to build new homes, there has to be a balance of the space that people have to do whatever they want to do and between other homes. So there's enough space per household, but of course there's smarter land use to allow more homes to exist within the same plot land compared to other land plots around the UK. I will say that. And also enough also compact exist also compacting the new homes next to each other to allow additional space for the green space and the shops that's going to be there, as they say they'll put in. You have to think about that as well, because again, there has to be enough space for homeowners and enough space for businesses and enough space for families to enjoy a day out in parks or whatever green space there will be. So it's not enough to build new homes, shops, businesses, and green space. It's about how wisely and efficiently that land is used to ensure that all of that stuff that the government says they will do is accommodated, not just at what is not just to the extent that is necessary, but also beyond that. So yeah, I genuinely hope that goes very well. I really want this. I want that to go ahead, and I do hope that does achieve to great lengths. But otherwise, I hope it's done efficiently and is done very well, as I want it to. The Ontario government has approved a fee to officially cancel its $100 million contract with Elon Musk's Starlink. The government source stated that the cancellation cost was significantly less than the full contract value. The cancellation is part of measures in retaliation to tariffs imposed by Trump. Ontario aims to find an alternative solution for stable high-speed internet access across the province. Yeah, that's a very good question. What's the alternative? What is Ontario going to do now? If they really want to bring high-speed internet access, what's the alternative besides Starlink? And this actually goes back to the point about Trump wanting to put tariffs on countries around the world. Whilst the US is influential and very important to a lot of countries' economies, everything needs an alternative. There has to be a backup plan because, and as of this recording, it's not clear if the tariffs are already in place, but I think in the next few weeks, those tariffs will already be in place anyway. What are those countries going to do if the cost to bring American imports into their countries are more expensive than it was previously? This is the same that can be said for Ontario's government about not do, about bringing Starlink to the Canadian province. Do they even have an alternative plan if they were not going to sign if they were going to cancel the contract with Elon Musk? That is something that not a lot of people think about. If there's no backup plan, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. And also, and I'm not saying this applies to all technology, prolonged use of technology, especially Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, can have negative effects on your body. Now, I'm not saying it's true or false, but that's what I've heard from a lot of people, whether it be experts or just regular everyday people. I'll just leave it at that. People can leave that to themselves. They can come to their own conclusions regarding that, or they can just look this up more in their own time. That's what I've heard. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, although useful, they have potential negative effects if you are in in a very close distance to it for a prolonged period of time. So yeah, there's that. Pope Leo XIV gets rock stars welcome at Catholic Influencer Festival. Pope Leo XIV received a rock star welcome at the Vatican's Festival of Catholic Influencers in Rome during the 2025 Holy Year celebrations this week. The event followed a background of the Vatican's week-long jubilee for young people with pilgrims and influencers gathering for the Holy Year and Digital Missionary celebration. Pope Leo urged influencers to maintain human relationships amidst the rise of digital ecosystems and artificial intelligence, warning against neglecting real encounters for clicks or followers. He emphasized that the goal goes beyond producing content. It involves fostering genuine connections between people, and he urged everyone to help maintain a culture centered on human values. The event highlighted the Church's priority to address AI's challenges and foster networks of truth and Christian humanism, suggesting ongoing engagement with digital mission work. Spot on. Couldn't have said that better myself. Pope Leo is very spot on with that. Whilst AI and technology as it is today, although useful and convenient for our day-to-day lives, you cannot be too reliant on it. What happened to going out, talking to people in real life? Like, there was a time before the technology we have today. Like, if we had to go back in time, and the technology we have today hadn't even existed yet, how were you going to make connections? How are you going to talk to people? How are you going to reach out to family? How are you going to commute from place to place? These are things that, again, A, not many people think about, and B, people, although will acknowledge that a time like that has existed before, times have changed, they say. We can do what we want because we have the technology to do that. Things are much more faster and convenient. Although that's true, what if that technology goes out? Then what? Again, people are so reliant on technology. They never think of a reality when all of that could just vanish or disappear. We had to go back in time to like the 1980s or maybe somewhere in the 19th, that. There are people that do question, what was life like before ChatGPT? I know. People used to go on Google and search things up. And you know what? That's still happening today, mostly with the older generation, because they don't know how to work ChatGPT or whatever AI chatbots are going about. And also, people who have used the internet at a much older age, they're already been used to that. They don't see any reason to change such habits. Otherwise, Pope Leo makes a very good point, and I absolutely agree with him on that. It's important that we try to connect with other people without having to rely on technology, because you never know the day, or at least a week, when that may not be operational. You might have to go out and meet people in real life. People have to prepare themselves if a day like that happens, because it will happen. Maybe not now, but very, very soon. Japan recorded its highest ever temperature of 41.2 degrees Celsius in Tanba, Hyogo Prefecture on Wednesday, according to NHK. The previous record was 41.1 degrees Celsius, set in 2018 and 2020. Over 10,804 people were hospitalized due to heat-related illnesses in 1 week. Authorities are urging people to take precautions against heat strokes as the heat waves continue. Yeah, you got to be careful out there. And yes, a couple episodes ago, I have said that although we shouldn't stress too much about heat because that's something that's usually happens very often in our lifetimes, or at least on a yearly pattern as well. But of course, there's always a limit, and of course, risk. We'll say weather manipulation is a thing, which again I can't argue with because that there is documentations by the U.S. government about patterns relating to that. I'm not saying they're using it. I'm certainly not saying it's true, but you have to ask yourself, why do they have that? It doesn't make any sense. It's not like they just craft something up for people to get their minds worked over about. But otherwise, heat waves are very serious, and whether or not there is some control or people have any control over that, it's important that everyone involved or anywhere around the world, you drink enough water, you have a balanced, healthy diet, maybe go outside and do some exercise, and of course, if you do get a bit of a headache, try listening to some brown noise on YouTube. That's what I did. As of this recording, a day before this recording, I had a headache. Firstly, what I did I forgot what it's called, but I did this cobra stretch and just tilt my head back slightly and then slowly turning my head from left to right, just to distribute the headache pains from the front back all the way to the back. Although that worked, it did come back stronger than ever. That's when I resorted to my next resort, which is to listen to brown noise. You can mostly find this on YouTube. Listen to brown noise for like an hour or two, and by the time I stopped listening to it, it kind of made a difference. It wasn't instant, but after a night-long sleep, waking up in the morning, my head feels fine. But that's just me. That's my experience. And this was like 20 degrees Celsius temperature, so I'm not sure if the same can be done in a 40 degrees Celsius climate. But in my experience, it has worked. But other than that, stay hydrated, healthy, balanced diet, and if possible, turn on your fan or air conditioning. If you have air conditioning. TikTok adds more safety tools, expands fact-checking feature. On Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, TikTok announced new safety features including parental notifications for uploads, comment filters, and creator controls. Ofcom's recent enforcement of age checks last Friday prompted TikTok to introduce new safety features, addressing concerns about potential harm to young users. Offering more oversight, parents can see the topics shaping their children's feed, block specific accounts from interaction, and get alerts when their child reports a video. According to TikTok, parents stay informed about teens' posts without harming creativity, and research with Internet Matters show teens feel positive when they control online habits. Following scrutiny over its compliance, TikTok will continue updating protections for teen accounts, despite a £1.8 million fine from Ofcom last year. Now, this is mainly back to the Online Safety Act that the UK government have passed that asks all of the major websites and applications or whatever platforms where young users would likely go onto to do whatever it is they want to do on those such platforms to verify that they are over 18. If they're not over 18, there will be specific content that will be blocked from those under 18, so those who are not old enough to view such explicit content will not see such content. Because if they see that content at such an early age, that will have some mental and emotional impact in later years. I'll agree on that, and that is a genuine concern. I will say that is something that has to be addressed. However, on the other hand, whilst it is important to ensure that children are safe from anything harmful to their emotional or mental state, mental capacities or states, what starts off as a source for good, it will slowly and justly turn into something that people of higher authority can use as a way to clamp down on preventing people looking up on information that such figures in high powers of authority don't want people that that are members of the public should be seeing. Like, there is a book written by George Orwell called 1984. Now, I'm not saying that the Online Safety Act should be vamooshed, but in my opinion, I think there has to be some clearer guidelines, and I think all the parties involved have to provide very, very strong evidence to ensure that there is a justified and valid reason to have such age verification on such platforms. And if the age verification processes are in place, the quality of such age verification does not get exploited. AI, right? I've seen a couple of comments on a couple of social media posts regarding the Online Safety Act. They said, verify my age, just scanning my face, I'll get my 3D model of a man with a beard in his 30s. Use my keyboard to shift his face about, and if the face scanning features says, okay, turn the head, okay, you're approved, you can use the website. You can now use the website. That is an issue that not many people are talking about. So, again, I understand protecting children from harmful content, but the age verification system in question is very, very exploitive, and the platforms hosting such verification processes, mainly third parties from the US. I think there should be separate regulations regarding age verification, because there'll be young children that will actually be smart enough to get around the age verification, at least regarding face scanning. Like, of course, there'll be young children that may not know much yet, but that does not mean they won't be smart enough to find a loophole to get around the age verification system. And I'll give them credit if they do so. But that is a genuine concern that people that's drafting this act or people involved that doing the age verification, they are not paying attention to that. They are not talking about how do they tackle that. So now this is not going to be brought up. No one's going to be talking about that in the next few months. But when they does, I'll be very, very interested to hear what those US third parties for the age verification systems for explicit websites, how are they going to tackle the loopholes that people are using to ensure they get access to the websites without having to be denied access, whether it be face scans or government IDs, and so on. And of course, there's separate issues about the data that's storing this government IDs, like the T app. If you have not heard about the T app, the platform where women can give like a Yelp-ish review about the men they have met. Say if they're good enough to date, or if they're very, very sus, or there are major red flags about these men. Women just say, don't date this guy, he's very dangerous, he's a predator, he's also misogynistic. Or women can say, this man is a great guy, He is a stand-up guy. He's very funny and he communicates very well. Anyway, the point I'm making is, whilst the T app has a system that checks on government ID to ensure that that a lot of the users on the T app are women, because it's literally an app for women, not men. Men are not allowed to be on the T app. Once women get the government IDs to verify their identity to use the T app, they can then access the T app and look up all the men that have been reviewed. Are they good to date? Should you avoid them? And so on. The T app is connected to a public server, and all of the information, like driver's license, other government ID by these women, they are made public. And because it's a public, anyone could look that up and use that data to make. I think there's another website called T-Spill. T-Spill is an app. Is a website. It's not an app. T-Spill is a website where people, mostly men, maybe I'm not sure about women, but mostly men, they can rank women. I'm not sure what the criteria is, but I think from what I've heard online, it's based on looks or something. And you can look at the top 50 highest ranked women on T-Spill whose information were leaked because they was using their driver's license and their data was associated with the T app to get access to the T app. But now all that information is being leaked because the servers that was used for the T app is public. So yeah, that's a whole separate mess. So the point I'm making is you gotta be careful. Technology, as advanced as it is, can also be very, very exploitive. So don't be like the women that were trying to use the T app but have their information leaked. Now, although I understand why women wanted to use the T app, because there are men that are genuinely concerning. There are scary men out there. But of course, there are complaints about the T app about defamation, antagonizing men, although the men in real life are actually good and not as bad as what most women say. And of course, majority of women's identity on the T app within the app are anonymous, which is now ironic because now their identity is being made public because the server that the T app was using was public, and now like I think everyone involved in that are pretty much victims. Everyone is a victim regarding the T app. I will say that everyone's a victim, and anyone that is using age verification, that they have to follow because of the Online Safety Act. I think that there are going to be problems in the near future. So I don't know what else to say. I'm genuinely speechless at this point. There are issues that are so obvious, but no one's going to pay attention to that because it's not that big of a deal, they say. Oh yes it is. Yes it is. But you're not going to get to that until there is an actual problem. When a problem actually happens, that's when you take action. That is not good enough. That is not good enough. Palo Alto Networks buying CyberArk in cash and stock deal value at about $25 billion. As of Tuesday evening, Palo Alto Networks is reportedly engaged in detailed negotiations to acquire the Israeli identity management firm CyberArk in a deal valued at over $20 billion. The deal emerges amid a broader cybersecurity consolidation wave, with recent large acquisitions by Google and Cisco prompting market interest. CyberArk's stock surged about 15% to a record high, while Palo Alto's share dipped over 3% following news of a potential acquisition. CyberArk, found in 1999, specializes in securing employee access to applications, and generated $11.5 million net income in quarter one on $318 million revenue. If completed, the acquisition would expand Palo Alto's identity management presence
marking its largest deal and following CEO Aurora's recent buying spree. As exciting that may sound for people in the cyber security sector, I don't have strong opinions, but I do have genuine, not too genuine, but I do have concerns about how this will go. And not just because I'm not just because there's something Israeli involved in this whatsoever, but I do wonder what presence will they potentially have in the next few years? Will we hear about them again? Maybe. But what could that be when we hear about them again? Well, I'm not going to pin too much on Israel, because I mean they're getting enough heat as it is regarding Gaza. But however, cybersecurity, it's important, especially as technology is advancing and again, it can be exploitive if people know the right tools and know the right strategy to get into such technology frameworks. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, it's exciting, it's a big deal. I mean, $25 billion, that's a lot of money. Big impacts will come out of this eventually. You don't just splash billions of dollars on any deal. There has to be a reason for why these companies are being acquired by someone. What the people acquiring such companies are planning to do with said companies and how that will operate. Great. OpenAI announced a new product called Study Mode for ChatGPT, designed to assist students in problem solving by utilizing guiding questions instead of direct answers. With Study Mode, ChatGPT will engage students by posing questions to test their understanding and may withhold answers unless they interact with the material. Study Mode aims to develop students' critical thinking skills while working on homework, test prep, and new subjects according to OpenAI. The feature is expected to be available for Edu subscribers in the coming weeks, as stated by Open. You know what? Good for them. I've been bashing on AI for a while. Like, people who are too reliant on artificial intelligence, it's not just an ethics concern, like being too reliant on AI for everything, but also a health concern. Like, it affects people's thinking ability. If people rely on AI for too long, they lose all ability to think beyond the surface level content. Now, not to say study mode for ChatGPT is going to be enough. That is never going to be enough, regardless. But it's something, it's a step forward. At least someone is addressing such concerns about how people think critically about stuff and how people use AI regarding whatever queries that comes to their minds. But of course, it's not enough to provide a study mode equivalent that tackles the issue at hand. I think there has to be alternatives to look up on other queries besides using artificial intelligence. Just like the question I asked, what was life like before ChatGPT existed? People used to go on Google to search stuff up and click on links that's associated with such query that they typed in. That should be the go-to first before asking AI if you're unable to find the answer you want. That's just me. And has worked very well for me in the long run. So I'm glad I thought of this sooner than later. But better later than never. Newsom is now a gun owner. Will he sign a ban on Glock sales in the state? California lawmakers are poised to pass a first-of-its-kind bill to ban the sale of new Glock handguns next month. Newsom's new gun ownership raises questions over whether he would support and sign the bill. Supporters cite the ease of illegal modifications, while critics warn it sets a dangerous precedent for border bans. Newsom recently accepted a handgun as a gift from conservative podcast host Sean Ryan. According to reports, it is Newsom's first registered firearm, Geez, what have you got me? Newsom said on the Sean Ryan show. You know, the last thing people would expect is I respect this gift, Newsom continued. I'm not anti-gun at all. Although he accepted the firearm, Newsom left it behind in Tennessee, for now. In order to bring it to California, he must comply with his own state's gun laws. That's interesting to hear. Well, California is predominantly liberal with a lot of things. Well, I mean, there is a few conservative places in California, but the majority of California is mostly liberal. And what their thoughts on guns is that there should be regulations and restrictions because they're dangerous and they could harm people. Yes, that's true. But guns could also protect you from unnecessary intruders. Or I'm not going to say kill people because that's just wrong. Very wrong. No one should kill anyone. However, it's important that people defend themselves in whatever way possible, even if it means getting your gun out to show that if you do not comply, I will shoot. And that's not to say they should be killed. No one should be ever killed ever. But I think there's a reason why the founding fathers had the First Amendment about rights to bear arms, is to defend yourself from any dangers or threats, or any potential intruders on your property, or at least within your household. So, now, of course, the gift he was given, I don't think that has going to have a strong influence on him to say, actually, I'm not going to put restrictions or regulations on firearm ownership because I like this gun. I'm not anti-gun at all, he says. So hey, anything is possible. I think it's just down to Newsom himself because he says he's not anti-gun, but the thing is though, whilst he does lean left, I have seen he is also trying to cater to more right-wing voters, at least in recent times. So is Newsom going to lift the regulations on firearms because he wants to, or is he going to do it because he has to? And if you choose one of the two options, man, that's complicated. Now, if Frisk was here and he was to ask, who do you think is going to be a Democratic frontrunner for the 2028 presidential election? I would say Newsom has a good chance because he does lean left, but he's also trying to cater to right-wing voters. Although he's not trying to show that too much. But if we were to learn anything from 2024, Democrats' left-wing voter base is already secured. You don't need to cater to the left-wing vote. But yeah, Kamala Harris still tried to cater to the left-wing vote anyway, and didn't focus on any of the moderate voters that were undecisive or trying to be open-minded about who they vote for, and they would only vote for the party because they believe the policies they have would benefit them for the greater good. And I think Trump got the upper hand on that one, and the rest is history, I would say. So I think Newsom is learning from the 2024 presidential election results that whilst it's important to cater to the left, because that's the Democrats' primary voting bloc, or demographic, I think he knows that that voter bloc is secured anyway. I think what he has to focus on is catering to the moderate voters, those who would only vote for a particular candidate if their policies are believed to be beneficial for them in the long term. So you know what? I'll give Newsom that. He's very smart with trying to cater to other voters and trying to show that what he wants to do if he runs for a presidential office that he can do, and he will try to do benefit. I don't think Risk is gonna buy into any of that for sure. And you know what? Fair enough. Yeah. I'm going on a massive long rant about whatever. It's the first time, in my opinion, but hey, it's better than me not saying anything at all, like when I had podcast guests. So actually, it's something. It's better than nothing. I'll give myself that one. It's certainly a start for sure. Although I do think to myself that when I do record podcast episodes, there will come a point where people will make content reviewing my episodes and they will possibly fact check or debunk whatever I say in these episodes and say, that's not true. He actually said this instead. I am going to have to prepare myself for that. And you know what? I'm willing to take it. If people are going to make content pointing out any fact checking or debunking what's said in my episodes, they can do that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I know that's going to happen at some point, especially with the project that me, Eric, and Shadowmine are working on. And although I'm saying this as if the project we're working on is going to happen very soon, I have to be honest. It's going to take a lot longer than most people will think. We're still working on it, but there's always a price to pay. There's always a price to pay, and it's going to take a lot of hard work as well. So, trying to be cautious, learning from past mistakes. Don't set dates until it is absolutely confirmed. But yeah, that's just me. I say a lot of stuff, I think too much, and I say too much. But yeah, I'm still alive. Maybe they'll wait till later until I'm getting enough publicity and say, how dare you? You can't say that! But those were different times, man, I say. I'll certainly say that, but those were different times. But you know what? People don't give a damn about different times because you still said it, and therefore you should get the axe from whatever job you're working for. And that's scary. That is very scary. I think there was this guy who was on MasterChef for the BBC. He said something, I think he said something controversial back in the day, argue it's racist. I'm not denying it, that's just what I've heard people say. And although he does regret saying that, and he does apologize for saying that, well, he's still let go because he did say something racist back in the day. And actually, back in the old YouTube days when people were voluntarily saying racist stuff or saying anything that is outright offensive. And if anyone was caught having those tweets still stayed up, even years after that was even posted, nope, you're fired. Get out of here. We can't have behavior like this in the space. I feel like people like that believe people can't change. I'm not defending people who have said said outrageous things in the past. I will only defend such people making these decisions if they still do that today. Who's to say people can't change? But even if people change for the better and they are not what they were before, saying outlandish, very offensive stuff, will that be enough for those involved? Like, are you a different person today than you were years ago? I think that's something that a lot of employers have to take into consideration. Whilst there are people out there who do or say outrageous things that they really shouldn't say at all to begin with, but also when that was said, and is it any different to the person now than they were back then? That's kind of murky, a bit of a grey area, but if it suffice, and it is noticeable, and it's clear that people can change, and they have moved on from such actions, why shouldn't they continue with whatever work they're doing? But of course, if that is still the case today, then of course, now get them out of here. They should never be in the position to be in where they are to begin with. So yeah, that I will say. A lot of people make mistakes, but but the thing to note is, it is what people do after that mistake is what really matters on who they are as people. And yeah, people can change, but it's going to take a lot of redemption to ensure that people can continue with work. So it's cruel. It's a cruel world out there. Even if you do provide a good case that you are a changed person from your outrageous actions, it's never going to be enough for everyone. I think it's best you just move on from that and maybe start your own stuff. Become independent. Because if you have a big enough fan base for what you want to do, what's the point being at a bigger corporation to begin with? I'm just saying, if there are individuals that are able to make their own stuff and have a big enough platform to do that and promote whatever independent project they're working on, they should go ahead with it and give options. It provides more options to people within particular interests outside of the big names that already exist with the infrastructure and the funding and so on. I like to see more independent projects coming up in the next few years. And I think that will happen. And not just because there is the changes in finances per individual, but of course, I think over the years, people starting to realize that not everything is all that is all wound up to be. You can't stay in one place forever. At some point, you will have to move on and maybe join or create another big project. It may not be as big as the big names or the major corporations, but if it gets the attention and it has the fan base, then who's to stop you? Nothing can stop you if that is the case. Anything is possible, and something like more independent works and projects is going to start popping up in the next few years, or at least in this coming decade. It is likely to happen, and that is it for the episode.